Welcome back to the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, where we're going to be going 1-8-3 West Virginia, Texas Tech down to the end of the card with Rob Veno. Rob Veno up 22 units in MLB year to date. Also on a 15-1, 15-20 star streak. That's all of his big bets. He's on a 15-1 streak. He's got a 15 star going tonight in the NFL Thursday night game. You can check that out at sportsmemo.com. Robbie Veno, welcome into the podcast. How you feeling?
I'm great today, Drew. How about yourself?
I am doing good. Excited to get after this Every Game on the Board podcast, and I think I'm going to head down to the North Carolina-Miami game. So it's an exciting day for college football for me, man.
Fantastic. Get to see UNC bring a lot of guys back tonight.
Yeah, real quick. I mean, you think, would you lay the 18 with the Canes tonight?
You know, I'm not so sure that I would. I didn't prefer either side here, but if I had to, I would play North Carolina plus the points. I think they've got the talent to stick around. Miami's defense worries me a little bit, but reading what Coach Fedora had to say this week about how big it is just to have all that depth back. And heading into the season, I thought UNC was going to exceed their season win total. So plus 17.5 seems like a lot to me. No Amon Richards for Miami tonight, so that hurts them a little bit. And you get the new quarterback, right?
Yeah.
For Miami.
That's what it sounds like anyway. And guys, if you want to hear Rob's full analysis on that game, we did it yesterday on the Every Game on the Board podcast, which will start on Wednesday's college football. We'll finish it up, most of it on Thursday, and then Friday's podcast will be NFL Every Game on the Board for the remainder of the football season. So we got West Virginia, Texas Tech up first in the Big 12. West Virginia making the trip from Morgantown to West Texas here. We got 3.5. West Virginia laying on the road, 72 now the total, Robbie. How you look to bet this one?
Well, for the West Virginia side, they just haven't been tested offensively yet this season. Heading into the year, Drew, the question marks around West Virginia were not about the offense. Everybody knew the offense behind Will Grier and that great receiving core with David Sills and company, Sills and Mims and all those guys. They were going to be good. No doubt about it. They, expectation was they'd have to outscore a lot of people, and it hasn't been the case so far this season. They've been good on the defensive side, but again, I think untested when you look at the opposition: Tennessee, Youngstown State, Kansas State. All three of those, if they combine their offensive players, they wouldn't put a unit as potent on the field as Texas Tech does. Texas Tech has been tremendous so far this season. Alan Bowman, the freshman quarterback, has stepped in and taken the Lubbock by storm. So for me, West Virginia's defense could be questioned here. No questions about their offense against a Texas Tech defense that has just been pretty much shredded for the majority of the season, although it was a nice game last week against Oklahoma State where they win 41-17. The total's in the place where it is, Drew, for a reason, and I believe we're going to see an extremely high-scoring game here, somewhat similar to what we saw between Houston and Texas Tech a couple of weeks ago. I don't know which defense can stop the other in this game.
Robbie, we got 185, 186, Louisiana Tech, North Texas. Looks like the Mean Green laying 7 at home, 63.5 the total, Robbie.
As hot as I've been on North Texas, I mean, to start the season when they played SMU, I caught every second of that game and just walked away from it. Is so impressed with the North Texas defense. Never mind the offense, which we knew about. Seth Luttrell's got the offense running on all cylinders down there behind Mason Fine. But the defense, to me, against SMU opening day was really, really good and an extreme surprise. Incarnate Word the next week, you can't really judge, but then they took on Arkansas and held Arkansas to 336 yards, and I know there's problems down there, but then they take on Liberty, a team that the betting world seems to be in love with, and they hold Liberty to 344, only 4.2 per play. So far this season, Drew, they're outgaining opponents by 1.5 yards per play. The defense, to me, has been the real surprise here. Now, all that being said, they probably meet their match here in Louisiana Tech. I'm far more interested in taking the points in this game than laying them. Louisiana Tech at the quarterback spot with Jamar Smith, every bit as good as Mason Fine. Their weaponry, every bit as good as what you'll see North Texas put on the field. And for me, I think they've been just a shade more tested because they've played LSU. Played LSU last week. It's a 38-21 game. No shame in that one. They were close. LSU tacked on a couple of scores to end the game. It was a 24-21 contest heading into the fourth. I think Skip Holtz is ready for this one. I like what North Texas has done, like both of these teams, but the preference here would be to take 7.5 points.
Robbie, we've got a Conference USA matchup here. The Charlotte 49ers go to Birmingham to take on the UAB Blazers. Looks like the Blazers laying 17 at home, 54 the total, Robbie.
Yeah, I didn't have, I looked this one up and down. I really couldn't come to a firm conclusion either way, Drew, whether side or total. I think if you back the UAB side, you're probably very, very happy with the offensive resurgence this year with Brian Vincent at offensive coordinator once again. They look really good on that side of the football. I just don't know that I could lay that much against Charlotte here. Not that Charlotte's a great football team, but it's a conference matchup and it's a divisional matchup here. I think Charlotte will at least come with 60 minutes of focus. I was a little surprised that the total went down. The big move initially from 55 all the way down to 51. Couldn't quite understand that, but still can't get myself to play either way, so I'll leave that one alone.
Robbie, we got Oklahoma State traveling to Kansas. Looks like this number just got hit from 17. Now it's 16.5 at all the leading indicator books. 62 the total with the Cowboys laying 16.5 on the road, Robbie.
Yeah, boy, Kansas looked horrendous last week against Baylor, Drew. They couldn't get anything going on the offensive side of the football. Defensively, Baylor kind of had their way with them and then shut it down. Matt Rule pretty much took his foot off the pedal at the end of that game. KU, like I say, just offensively after a couple of big weeks, point scoring wise, I know that the game against Rutgers, a couple of their scores, the 55 is a little deceptive because a couple of those were defensive touchdowns. So to see them come out last week against Baylor and play so horribly on offense, like I say, that was a little bit of a surprise after what they had done the previous 2 weeks. They're going to face an extremely angry Oklahoma State team here. I just don't believe that KU has the horses offensively to move against this Jim Knowles defense. Like I say, last week what happened to Oklahoma State against Texas Tech certainly will be in the front of their minds here. I expect OSU's defense to pretty much shut down Kansas in this one, and I like the offensive side of the football. Again, Cornelius has really done nothing wrong, nothing great, but nothing wrong at quarterback so far, and Justice Hill should find a lot of holes in the KUD, so I'm not really in agreement with that push, that recent push down to 16.5. I think Oklahoma State's the right side of the game, and perhaps the over as well.
Rob, we got 191, 192, Marshall, Western Kentucky. This number kind of jumped off the board at me. I'm kind of wondering why Marshall isn't laying a bigger number here, but they're laying 4 on the road, 52 the total, Robbie.
Well, that game last week against NC State that Marshall played told a lot. They got behind real big, real early, and the second half they played better. It's hard to really gauge whether that's NC State relaxing a little bit or whether that was Marshall improving in the second half. For Western Kentucky here, Drew, the problem that you have is you don't know which quarterback's going to play in this game. You've got the top 2 quarterbacks on the team, both injured. Drew Eccles hasn't played in a couple of games for Western Kentucky, but even when he went down, Davis Shanley stepped in, played pretty well. Last week, Davis Shanley gets hurt, and you're down to number 3, Stephen Duncan. And right now, as hard as I looked prior to this podcast, I couldn't really find which one of these 3 head coach Stanford is going to start in this game. Could be any of them. I think to play this game correctly, you probably have to wait till we get a definitive word on who the starting quarterback's going to be. I will say this for Western Kentucky. 2 weeks ago when we talked about this team, the offensive line was an extreme mess. position switches due to injury, and the Western Kentucky coaching staff knew they had their hands full. But the last couple of weeks, if you read into this week what they're saying about that offensive line, market improvement inside that interior. So you have to like that for WKU. And that victory over Ball State, 28-20, was pretty impressive last week to go on the road and get that game. So I like the way they're playing in that aspect. I like the fact that this team hasn't given up and that they're continuing to fight hard. But Marshall, extremely focused for this contest. The coaching staff, right down to the players, everybody focused on conference season here. They're the better team, Drew, but I can't play it until I know who's going to play quarterback for WKU. And at that point, we may even see some more line movement.
Robbie, moving down the card, we head to the SEC, 193-194. Florida at Mississippi State. Dan Mullen making his return. We got 50.5 the total, with Mississippi State only laying a touchdown at home, Robbie. I'm worried here. I think Florida is walking into a buzzsaw here with Mississippi State. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that, the reason why the number's so low, Drew, is that a lot of credence is given to the fact that Dan Mullen knows the team he's going to play. Just coached there last year, knows the personnel, but doesn't know the system, right? Joe Moorhead came in and redid everything, so he's going to have to go to the film room to see what Joe Moorhead is doing that's different than what he's doing. I don't put a lot of credence into Dan Mullen knowing the personnel on Mississippi State for those reasons. The fact that the offense is different, the defense is different, everything's different here at MSU. I'd put more emphasis on the fact that Mississippi State's going to be angry. And I said, maybe I'm putting too much emphasis on something here, Drew, but I saw that Joe Moorhead post-game conference, and that was, for a guy who doesn't get extremely angry, he was pretty angry with their performance and their sloppiness due to penalties and stuff like that, stuff that can be controlled. So I think they're going to come out with a huge effort here. To me, there's no doubt who the better team is. I think that this defensive line for Mississippi State can get after Felipe Franks and force him into some mistakes. So I would be on the Mississippi State side here. I think both sides of the ball. Nick Fitzgerald should have a nice game here. Like I said, I would prefer the Mississippi State defensive line to do damage against the Florida offense. So for me, it would be Mississippi State.
195-196, Ole Miss at LSU, 59.5 the total. Looks like LSU laying 10.5 or 11, depending where you shop this game in Baton Rouge. How would you look to bet it, Robbie?
I'd probably look to bet it over the way I look to bet every Mississippi game. Now, last week we didn't play because obviously the forecast was miserable as far as rain and lightning were concerned. And sure enough, that game went through a 2-hour rain delay. There were a few games last week down south that had some weather difficulties. But they played Kent State last week in a game that was up-tempo both ways. But because of the jaggedness of the game, stop start, muddy field, after the rain delay, it made a difference, made an impact. I think there's going to be points here. Listen, Mississippi played Alabama already this season. First play of the game, they throw a touchdown pass. They don't do anything after that. That's a game to learn from. Don't believe that LSU defensively is quite what Alabama is, and I'm really surprised, Drew, to tell you the truth, to start this season that the LSU pass defense has given up as much per game as they have with Greedy Williams and company back there. But Tamu's going to play at quarterback. The injury doesn't look to be too severe. I know they were a little worried about the shoulder during the game last week because they started to hand off an awful lot, but then he let it loose 3-4 times after that, and it looked just fine to me. So Tamu will be in. A.J. Brown's going to play. I like their weaponry against LSU, and I really like LSU's offense. I like any offense against Mississippi's defense right now, so we'll probably look at that one toward the over.
Robbie, we got 197, 198 in the Sun Belt, Coastal Carolina, traveling to Troy, Alabama. Looks like the Trojans laying 14 at home, 54 the total.
Probably a good play too, Drew, because for Coastal Carolina offensively, quarterback Kilton Anderson means everything to that team, and he's not going to play here. It doesn't look like he's going to play here. I'd give that about a 90% chance he doesn't play. What's going to ensue will be them starting true freshman Bryce Carpenter, who, by the way, went 5 for 5 last week in relief, threw for 82 yards. But you're not taking a true freshman on the road in conference, even though it's the Sun Belt. I know it's not the SEC, but you're taking a true freshman on the road into Troy, arguably the best defense in this league. I don't think they're going to make a lot of hay offensively with that formula come this Saturday. And Troy's offense has improved a little bit off the preseason expectations. I know that when they lost quarterback Brandon Silvers and some of that offensive talent, I myself was one who thought they would be down this year. They're probably still slightly down, but I think they're coming on. But they can score points with their defense in this game, in my estimation, Drew. To me, 14 doesn't look too big. I think they can make that look rather small on both sides of the football here, so I wouldn't want any part of Coastal Carolina in that game.
We got another number where I don't think it looks big enough. We got FAU on the road laying 3, 61.5 the total at MTSU. This game in Murfreesboro, but the Lane Train, they're 2-2, but their 2 losses, UCF and Oklahoma. Those, everybody knew they were going to lose those 2 games. Versus now they're coming back to kind of relevancy in conference, but they're only laying 3, Robbie. What's up with this number?
Yeah, I don't know what's up with this number, Drew, to tell you the truth. I think I probably still hold out a little bit of respect for MTSU just because Stock still remains the quarterback. Now, just to give you some kind of guidance, Drew, my power rating showed Florida Atlantic on the road -3.5.
Okay.
So it's not that far-fetched to see this line at 3. Middle Tennessee had an off week here. They do have the offensive explosiveness. I know Lane Kiffin, starting 2 weeks ago after the Oklahoma game, really tried to work his team on tackling, but we saw against Central Florida there's no improvement on the defensive side of the football. I think what will happen here in favor of FAU is we will probably see Devin Singletary get unleashed finally. He's been the object or the focal point of every defense he's faced so far. We've seen him kept pretty quiet to this point. Even if Middle Tennessee defensively focuses on Devin Singletary, I don't believe they're going to stop him. I think this is the game where he gets rolling. The FAU offense should be real good here. All that being said, Stockstill and company can do some damage offensively as well against this Florida Atlantic defense. Like I say, for Lane Kiffin to really make a point in practice for now 2 consecutive, probably the 3rd consecutive week from what I read on, how about we learn how to tackle here, and the team just doesn't improve. I don't think that gets better quick. That's more of an indication of who you have on your defensive side of the football. I think both sides can get up and down the field. And maybe that, to me, I'm kind of with my eyes. I agree with your opening statement that the number's probably too low. I still prefer FAU as one of the 2, they're one of the top 3 teams in this conference. I think MTSU falls into that next rung. But if we group together Florida Atlantic, North Texas, Louisiana Tech, I think they're your best 3. It's about time Florida Atlantic shows that that they are one of the best in this conference. And like you say, the competition level has been pretty rugged. MTSU's been through a little bit of the rigor too, having played Vanderbilt and Georgia. So certainly after you face those 2 defenses, coming into play Florida Atlantic's going to look pretty good to Middle Tennessee.
Yeah, thanks for clearing that one up, Robbie. They are off the bye and on the road. I guess it's not too horrendous of a number. We got 201, 202. I'll tell you, Robbie, I really got to pump the brakes this week. I'm liking all the favorites. I'm wondering why these numbers are so low. USC only laying 3 on the road at Arizona, 61 the total. Why is this number only 3, Robbie?
The scary point of this game, if you're going to play USC, to me at least, the scary point would be that all indications are Khalil Tate is as close to 100% health-wise as he's been all season long. We haven't seen Khalil Tate bust out yet as far as the running game goes. He's been – and it's been questioned a little bit, right? I mean, after a couple of these games, we've heard a lot of questions. Why is Kevin Sumlin making Khalil Tate a pocket passer? That's not exactly what he is. He's a dual-threat quarterback. Let him loose. He can go for 400 combined total yards by himself. But there was a reason behind it, and the reason being that Tate just not quite healthy yet with his legs, but heading into this week, every indication I've read or heard seems to think that this could be the week where he breaks out, and I wouldn't want to be the USC defense if in fact that's the case. Now, power ratings showed USC minus 2.5 in this one. Money has carried USC to an even larger favorite now. As you just said, I'm a little leery of playing the USC side. I'd be more apt to look at this game from a totals perspective, Drew, because if I'm to believe what I'm reading and what I'm hearing about Tate, then I think we're going to get into a little bit of a high-scoring game here. USC showed last week that with the true freshman quarterback, yes, they can move the ball. Yes, they can score points. They're getting better as time goes by here. And Arizona defensively doesn't put up much resistance. For me, it might be over the total.
Robbie, we head out west. We got Boise State traveling to Wyoming, 17. The Broncos laying on the road, 47 the total.
Yeah, we'll kick it off just with what the power rating showed here. They showed me Boise minus 17.5, so that's pretty much right on the money. Wyoming has showed us absolutely zero from an offensive standpoint so far this year, Drew. It's a lot like last year. Even with Josh Allen, they couldn't score points. The defense holds up, but Craig Bohl's offense, he's kind of set in his ways on how he does things, pro style, schematically, style-wise, but it just right now isn't working with the true freshman at QB. That opening game, when they played New Mexico State, I think maybe a few opinions jumped up on this Wyoming team just by the way that they dominated in that contest. And if I remember right, Drew, watching that game, sometimes these announcing teams get carried away, but, you heard so much about Wyoming, maybe the best defense in the group of five, blah, blah, blah. After a while, playing defense all the time with your offense not scoring points, it grows old, and those defenses get tired. Now they're going to have to face Boise State after getting a week off and getting their tail handed to them by Oklahoma State in a game that was really hyped up, and a lot was made of Boise State going to the New Year's Day 6 if they win that contest, and they had a lot of people thought they had a chance to win that game. That was a bad loss for Boise State. They need to make up for that conference play. Obviously, Brian Harsin gets through to his team here. I think that Wyoming's in for a lot of trouble here because they just can't match Boise State's potency. You can play defense for only so long, and then the roof caves in. That might happen to Wyoming in this game.
Robbie, we'll head to even more west. Hawaii, San Jose State. We got the Rainbow Warriors laying 10 on the road, 65.5 the total.
Yeah, with Hawaii, Drew, and even though it's San Jose State, I think you have to play them over the total. They are so explosive. And for this San Jose State team, again, the run and shoot is not something that these teams see all that often. They saw it with Hawaii a few years ago, back in the mid-2000s before the changes came. Colt Brennan and company back then. But to go back to the run and shoot here, Nick Rolovich made a great decision because I don't know that these conference teams can handle them. Too many weapons. This team looks to just outscore you. They're trying to make just enough stops to win a ball game. They had a chance at Army in the end of the game for sure, and that was a pretty wicked scheduling spot for them. A noon start on the East Coast coming from Hawaii. It's like a 7 a.m. game for them. They got off quick, but they didn't get out in front far enough of Army. And now we see how good Army is. Army played Oklahoma to overtime, so I don't think there's any shame in coming all the way to West Point, New York, and losing 28-21. I think they'll score big here. I think San Jose State can answer as troubled as they are on both sides of the football. I've seen Hawaii's defense 3-4 times now this season. I believe San Jose State will score some points here, so I may look over.
A big one. We got Stanford, Notre Dame. Looks like Notre Dame 5.5, pretty much across the board. 52.5 the total, Robbie.
Yeah, I think they're in a great spot situationally, Drew. First of all, Brian Kelly makes the switch to Ian Book at quarterback last week, which gives them a more balanced attack. Brandon Wimbush every week come on the podcast and you're just repeating yourself. Can Brandon Wimbush throw the ball well enough for Notre Dame to get teams to back off the line of scrimmage? Well, we don't have that problem anymore. Ian Book throws the football all levels, whether it be sprint outs, short passes, medium range, deep ball. He threw them all last week, and Notre Dame looked real good against a lousy defense that fired their defensive coordinator after that game. So let's take that into consideration here. Stanford's a better defensive side. But Notre Dame is on an upswing here with their quarterback now found, and Stanford comes off that, I don't even know how they pulled that game off last week. Miracle overtime win against Oregon. Everybody who watched the game knows that Oregon was going in for a touchdown, and it looked like they had scored a touchdown to put themselves up 31-7 in that contest. That touchdown was overruled. They wound up, fumbling and have it returned 90 yards for a touchdown. The whole game switched. But that's draining for Stanford. That was a huge game inside the division where Pac-12 supremacy in the North is concerned. And now you got to take it on the road to South Bend against a team that's just as good talent-wise as you are. And emotionally, they're not spent. I'm sure David Shaw and that group can get up, but I don't know that they can come with the focus that they had last week, Drew. I think Notre Dame right now probably I bet you they're real happy that they catch Stanford at this point in the season. In fact, in this exact game, rather than somewhere else on their schedule, because it does favor them quite a bit.
Yeah, spot-wise for sure, it's with the Irish. We got Michigan at Northwestern. Looks like 14.5 across the board, 47 the total, Robbie.
And it looks like Pat Fitzgerald, the head coach of Northwestern, is talking about having to start a linebacker at running back this week. Now, against that Don Brown defense for Michigan, that's troublesome. Jeremy Larkin, their top running back, had to retire from football this week, and now they're kind of strapped for who they're going to play in the backfield. And Clayton Thorson at quarterback, he came into the season not healthy, coming off the ACL injury, and he hasn't really looked great so far. And Michigan just looks better and better and better every single week. How they lost that opening week game to Notre Dame, a little bit beyond me. I think they should have won that contest. But Shea Patterson in a rhythm now, quarterbacking this team. I think they've scored 40 or more 3 straight weeks. And Northwestern's searching for answers. I give Northwestern the benefit of the doubt somewhat, Drew, because the last 2 seasons, if you just go back and check their season-long schedule, they started slow 2 years ago, and Pat Fitzgerald got to his team, and they came on strong at the end of the year. Last year, same thing. I think they won 9 games in a row to close out the season, either last year or the year before. So they do make strides as the season goes on. You can't really throw slow starts in their face and just stick to that as an opinion with them. But I don't know that they are close here in this game. I think right now Michigan's flexing their muscles. They're becoming the team I thought they were to start the year. And just by virtue of their defense and the way I feel like their defense can dominate the Northwestern offense, I don't think 14 is enough here. So I would be looking towards Michigan.
We got Arkansas, Texas A&M, SEC West battle here, 60 the total, with A&M laying 21 at home.
I don't know. Is there a case to be made for Arkansas right now, Drew? I don't know. I
don't think so.
Yeah, very difficult. And you feel for Chad Morris. At least I do, because I like Chad Morris as a head coach. I think he's going to do real good things at Arkansas. But, the quarterback situation is a real mess right now. Ty Story kind of thrown to the wolves. Again, it's we've said this numerous times on the podcast, but it's important to note that this is as drastic a switch schematically on offense as there was in the nation. I mean, this change and the Florida State change, to me, were the 2 most polar opposites. And to go from Brett Bielema's offense to what Chad Morris is trying to do, like I say, it's just the pieces don't fit right now. It's going to benefit Texas A&M, who covered against Alabama last week. I think Jimbo Fisher, right now, SEC-wise, maybe coach of the year for what he's done, even in losing efforts, because they played Clemson far better than anybody expected. They their first team to cover against Alabama this year. I mean, they're point spread darlings at this point. And I think they're just waiting on a game where they can go out and they can destroy somebody. And this is probably the team, after what we've seen out of Arkansas the last 2 weeks. Not close against North Texas, get buried by Auburn last week. Chad Morris will make improvements throughout the season, but I don't know that they're improved enough to take on Texas A&M this week. At home, Texas A&M probably minus the points would be the way I'd look.
Rob Veno, follow him on Twitter at Rob Veno Sports. We got one game left. Make sure to check out Robbie's 15-star NFL going tonight. He's 15-1 on his best bets in college and NFL. Also check out his NFL and college for Saturday and Sunday. Rob Veno's a great choice to go up some units this year in both college football and NFL. Last game up, Robbie, 213-214. The Oregon Ducks travel to play the Cal Bears, the Golden Bears here. Laying 2 on the road, the Ducks are 58 the total, Robbie.
Yeah, Cal will be ready. And there's no question, Justin Wilcox and that defense, they'll be ready. Whether they can hold up for 4 quarters against Oregon's offense, I really question. I think there's, especially in the running game here, Drew, I think there's a lot of opportunity for Oregon to rip off big chunks, to make big plays, and to score points. The problem you run into is, can Mario Cristobal pick his team up off the mat after last week? Now, I happen to think he will, and I know that's always subjective, opinion-wise, whether or not a team can bounce back off just a dreadful loss, heartbreaking to lose that game at home where they could have had a leg up in the North Division. But there's plenty of time left in Pac-12 play, and to me right now, Washington doesn't look as dominant as many had thought they would be. So that division probably still up for grabs. Oregon, as long as they come to play here, Drew, I think despite the fact that Justin Wilcox is a real good defensive mind, I think they'll find enough holes in that defense over the course of 4 quarters. And for California, the lack of explosiveness on offense still hurts. They just can't make plays downfield. I think it'll be a tough environment. But if I had to, I would play Oregon. I probably won't end up playing this game just out of fear that, on the road in Wilcox's defense, and maybe they get a couple of turnovers early and get off to a quick lead, and Oregon has to track them down. But I do think they're the better team, and I do think there's a lot of plays to be made for Oregon, especially on the ground here with Herbert at quarterback, running the football as well as handing it off.
He's Rob Veno, obviously knows this stuff. Great choice to get you on the right side for your college football and NFL wagers. Thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll be back tomorrow with the NFL Every Game on the Board podcast.